I walked into that small neighborhood bakery thinking I would only be there for a minute, but the moment I stepped through the door, I heard a tiny, shaky voice say, "Mommy hasn't eaten, can you share expired bread and everything?" Inside me stopped. I turned around and saw a little boy, maybe 7 years old, holding the sleeve of a woman who looked exhausted, like she had not slept in days. Her clothes were clean, but worn. Her eyes were red, and she kept whispering to him to stop asking people while trying to smile like everything was normal. And that smile broke my heart, because it was the same smile I used to force years ago when I was struggling as a single dad, trying to pretend I was fine so my son wouldn't worry. The bakery worker snapped at them, saying they don't give out expired bread because this isn't a charity, and the boy flinched like he had done something terribly wrong. The mother apologized again and again in a tired voice, and I felt this wave of anger rise in me, because no one should be treated like that just for being hungry. Maybe it hit me harder because I once stood in that same place scraping together coins to buy a cheap loaf while pretending I wasn't desperate, and now here I was, a single dad and a CEO, walking into a moment that felt like a memory thrown right back at me. I walked over to them and asked if they were all right. The woman tried to lie, saying they were just having a bad morning, but the little boy shook his head and said she hadn't eaten in 2 days and they had been sleeping in their car. She froze when he said that, like she wished she could take the words back, but it was too late, and then she broke down crying right there in front of everyone, while the boy held her hand like he was the parent and she was the one who needed comfort. When I told them I wanted to buy them food, she refused immediately. She said she wasn't a beggar. She said she didn't want her son to see her taking charity. She said people had already made her feel like trash, and she couldn't take more of it. The bakery worker rolled his eyes again, and that was enough for me to push past her refusal. I told her I was doing this because I wanted to, not because she owed me anything, and eventually she nodded, though she kept apologizing, like she had done something wrong by existing. I ordered enough food for both of them to eat properly and told my assistant to clear my meetings for the day, which shocked her because I never cancel work. But I sat with that woman and her son while they slowly ate, and she told me everything her job had let her go. Her husband had disappeared. She had used up every bit of money trying to keep things normal for her son, but when the car broke down, they had nowhere left to go. She kept blaming herself for everything, even though she had done everything she could to keep that boy safe. Listening to her felt like listening to a version of my own past, except nobody had stepped in to help me back then. And I kept imagining my son in that boy's place, thinking maybe if someone had helped us earlier, our lives would have been different. That thought stayed with me while she talked, and finally I made a decision. I told her I wanted to offer her a job at my company, an entry-level position with steady salary, housing assistance, and childcare support until she could stand on her own. She stared at me like she thought I was joking, but when she realized I was serious, she covered her face with her hands and cried harder than before. Her son hugged my leg and whispered, "Thank you for feeding Mommy," and for a moment I couldn't even speak, because that simple sentence hit deeper than anything I had heard in years. I told her she didn't owe me anything. She only had to take the chance she was being given, and 2 weeks later she started working. She turned out to be one of the most reliable, hardest working people in the whole company, and little by little she rebuilt her life, her confidence, her stability, and watching her get back on her feet felt like watching a second version of my own journey, but this time with someone there to steady the path. That little boy and my son eventually became friends, and every time I saw them playing together, I kept thinking about the moment in the bakery, the trembling voice, the expired bread, the mother trying so hard not to break, and how one small choice changed everything for them. And maybe for me too, because it reminded me why sometimes you step in even when life tells you it isn't your responsibility.